Okay, so there's the apparatus from last time. What do you notice is different from when we started?
Water went back into the test tube and it lowered.
Okay, water went back into the test tube.
And now there's less water
And there's less water.
in the
beaker.
beak.
Okay, so the water that's in the test tube
Was in the beak.
was in the beaker. So in order for water to go into the test tube, what kind of things had to happen?
Movement. Like air had to go out. Yeah.
Okay, so forces. Remember in science, nothing was sucked anywhere. So go with that. So what has happened?
The water vapor inside the test tube condensed, and then the remaining water refilled part of the test tube, but there's still air in it,
Okay.
or gas.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back with what you first said. You said water vapor did what?
Condensed.
So what does that mean?
It turned back into a liquid instead of
Okay.
gas.
So you're telling me that if water was still in that space, right? But it existed how?
It's vapor gas.
As
or-
gas. Okay. So that leads back to the bubbles that we were talking about at the beginning. Now, what kind of bubbles do you think entered that test tube? What was in the bubbles?
Oh, water vapor.
Why do you think that?
Because it turned into gas form when they got to 100 degrees Celsius, or well, a little bit less, but
Okay. So we had little bubbles that started at first, and we had bigger bubbles that came later. Remember when the test tube kind of was moving up and
Yeah.
what caused that to move up and down? One of you commented on what was happening when it came up and when it came down. And Johnny, it might have been you.
I don't remember, that was about a week ago. And that was a few days ago.
I don't know, I thought the water was refilling the test tube.
Okay. So the little bubbles, back to my big question.
Oh man.
There were little bubbles on the side of the beaker, and there were bigger bubbles on the bottom of the beaker. Were those bubbles, do you think, made of the same thing?
Could have been.
Are you more sure of one over the other?
Yeah.
Which one are you more sure of?
That the larger bubbles would have been water vapor.
Okay, why do you think that?
Because when it got to the 93 degrees Celsius, the water would have been at boiling temperature, so the water would have turned to vapor. So
Okay. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody? Would that be logical?
could be.
Could be. Okay, the little bubbles, did they occur at boiling?
No.
No. So therefore, do you think both bubbles are...
No.
So where do those little bubbles come from?
From the bottom. Like the sides of the bottom. Those little ones did. Like that's where they first started.
Okay, so I asked that incorrectly. If I have a bubble, what do I have in it?
Air. Or
Gas.
Gas. So the big bubbles at the bottom, you told me were bubbles made of,
Water vapor.
okay. So the little bubbles have to be made of a what?
Gas.
Gas. So what do you think are in those?
Hydrogen.
Why do you say hydrogen?
Because it becomes a gas at a lower point.
Okay. Do you know that? I
No.
don't know that. I don't know that either. But why would you pick hydrogen as opposed to other gases?
Because water's made out of hydrogen and oxygen.
That's what I was assuming is that it was. So did we have a chemical reaction that broke water into different?
We had a physical change.
Okay, we had a physical change. So is it possible those bubbles are hydrogen?
Yeah.
Yeah, but did it come from the water?
No.
No. So let me put you on a different tangent.
Okay.
What survives in water?
Like You made that very vague.
And they are living organisms, right?
Yeah.
And what do they need to survive?
Oxygen,
So how do they get oxygen out of water?
their gills,
And where does that oxygen come from?
the water.
Chemical reaction that it's broken apart?
Yeah.
So how does or when we talk about the river in fishing, we'll say, oh, the river has higher oxygen levels at this time. Where does that come from?
There.
Okay. So is there air in the water?
Yeah.
So what's in the air?
Water,
Water vapor,
oxygen, hydrogen,
oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen.
argon.
Okay. So there's all these gases that are in the air. Do they get into the water?
Yeah.
How do they get into the water?
Waves.
Okay, any movement. Typically, on a windy, wavy day, there's going to be a higher concentration of oxygen. Or in a river in the spring, there's often higher concentrations of oxygen. So, back to my other question. What are the little bubbles on the sides of the beaker?
Nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen,
And that is grouped together as,
air.
do you think those little bubbles are air?
Yeah.
Have I convinced you of that, or do you really think
I don't know.
that? That's a
I'm talking in riddles and it's hurting my face.
I'm gonna have you guys write your own opinion to that. So in this system of water, though, what else? There's one other thing you should notice about the water that changed.
It's clear and
No, it's like cloudy.
Is it more clear or less clear? If
More
you
clear.
remember, I know that was last week.
Oh, it's less.
I think it's less clear. I think it's less clear. So what in that system of water, besides H2O molecules, what's in water?
minerals. And
Minerals,
our water would be a lot of iron.
okay, possibly sand,
Oh, whatever that red thing is there.
okay. Could have been something that was in the beaker. And what else, when you do water tests, what other things are in water?
Sulfur,
Okay,
magnesium,
sulfur,
depending.
could be fertilizers. Answer my one last question. Is there air from the atmosphere in water?
Yeah.
Okay, so we all agree with that. Our only discrepancy is if those little bubbles are that or not. Yeah, all right. I'll have you guys write about that in a little bit.
I have a feeling they're not air just because she said that.